Hello and welcome to the first editor portion of making Koplic Platoon leader. Today we will be going over how to make a basic mission. By far I am no means an expert on how to build these things, although this video will be just kind of about how I went on building my first mission, how all of these things were set up, and yeah, kind of what I learned from it. So first and foremost, this is this is what the mission entails. These are the groups of enemies that may be present on the map, and the things used to create this mission. So I'm fairly certain that most people are already sure as to how to use the basic 4 items here. The spawn item group right here, where to spawn an object. We can spawn one object using that one, use this command to spawn multiple objects, make a waypoint using this command, and making a trigger with that command, or that icon, and making waypoints with this command. But the main bulk of the things that you'll be using to actually create your mission, making the detailed things, will be the bottom 3 icons over here. So first and foremost, you want to get a general idea for your mission first. Before you do all of this, before you actually start plucking down objects, you generally want to formate a scenario, just kind of in your head, imagining various different groups of places, of formations being at different places, and how you want the battle to really go forth. One of the things that I find really helpful in picking out a scenario location is taking out a little helicopter, the Hummingbird, the MH9, and just kind of flying it around the map and really taking note of what is around and how these terrain features will play into your scenario. And I find that a really good way to just kind of, figure out how how interesting the terrain would be. Another thing that it helps doing is that it helps set down realistic scenarios for you. I mean, you do see a lot of mission assault scenarios just kind of being plugged down into one kind of an arbitrary object, or an arbitrary location with arbitrary force direction. So for example, I mean, you might see missions where instead of attacking from, like, say, this village right here, the designer may have set you up with some AI troops over here, and you're supposed to assault across the river, which would be quite problematic, whereas in a more of a sandboxy scenario, you could just kind of take your troops around this lake, come over here, and attack from a much better direction, right? So there are things like that you have to say, is this logical? Would this be a logical place? Of course, you want to keep the fun in the game. Fun is obviously the most important thing there, though. So how do we go from units, or rather, how do we go from an idea to this sprawling mess of waypoints and other stuff? Well, people are already familiar with plucking down objects, so let's figure out how to do the more advanced things. Using the waypoints, people know how to use the move waypoints, directing troop groups from one location. People probably also know how to use the dismissed command, as well as the cycle command, and those are the 2, I would say, like, a little bit more difficult commands to kind of note. And what these are is the cycle command essentially just repeats whatever command is next to it. So you'll see that if I it's like a magnet. If I put it close to one thing, it'll make like a chain of waypoints like that. So that's just going to get this little patrol to cycle around and around and around. And speaking of this patrol, it should probably have a lower probability present, so we're going to set it like that. The other command is the dismissed command, which will just dismiss all the troops. These men are just going to wander about the area by themselves. But I'm sure most of the people here are interested in building, creating briefings, creating objectives, and making the game finish. So how we do that is through the use of the module system. You can do it all with scripting and stuff like that, but that's more time consuming, and it's not as fun, nor is it as personally I'd say intuitive. Now, with the module system, a big thing about ARMA 3 is Bohemia Interactive's I'd say effort in making the the scenario creation much more simpler. What we're going to do here is that we are going to plug down a create task object in order to make tasks essentially objectives, and a create a diary record for the purposes of creating a diary record. And how this works is that all of these things work on groupings and synchronization using this linking tool. This linking tool is quite essential. One of the things that you can do with it is that you can use it to link it up with the high command system. And as you may have seen in the other commentary video for this particular scenario, you may recall that we were in command of one squad of our own troopers, but in addition we were actually able to command 3 other squads as well. And how this works is that I've plugged down these high command modules, again going to the bottom icon here, the little box category. I believe it was in miscellaneous or something like that, and you essentially just plug down those 2 items. But how do you use these items, and how do you make it into a coherent mission, stuff like that? Well, what you would do is that you would need to synchronize these icons up along with your troops. So for the high command system, what we needed to do was that we needed to synchronize or link the subordinates to the commander. And what we essentially do is we link it through the modules here. The modules are little pipe junctions, and and they just kind of link to outlets, really. So you can place these module icons anywhere and they'll function. It doesn't really matter. It's there for the purposes of ease of use, for visual building, I suppose. And what these are is that these are just links using this link tool to one thing or another. So we have the commander, which is us, linked there. I've actually included a secondary commander, which isn't synchronized just yet. That was just kind of for the purposes of doing that walkthrough video, just in case that we died. That probably will not be present in the version that you're playing in. But anyhow, these 2 are linked up like that. So it'll create a blue link there. And this link is not to be confused with the light blue link, which is represented to be a group. You can actually use the high command system using the grouping. A link right here, the cyan line, as opposed to the navy blue line. But it does create a few problems. Overall, the most smoothest way is to do it like this. Connect who you want to lead the troops to the high command module. High command module, commander module acts as a little bit of a pipe junction or an intersection, and then it'll lead to the subordinates, which will go back to it. And then from the subordinates, it will go to the troops. And what this will do is that it'll set it up so then when you issue orders, it'll go through a little junction, and then it'll be distilled to the appropriate troop. So that is the high command system right there. The journal system is fairly similar. In fact, all of these systems are fairly similar, although this part is a little bit tricky. So how you create a diary record is you go in here. Let's take and you essentially write your stuff over here in these little categories, and then you really just kind of fill up the description with what you want to say, and then go from there. So for example, I replace the title with I don't know, poops and poop, and then the other ones are set up like that. So then we synchronize poop that to ourselves, and that'll essentially set that up. For the create diary record, the description here, it's all on one line. So if you do want to edit the text here, you're going to have to do that either making it an external file and essentially scripting the game to use a external text file as the description, or using some of the alt command codes that'll give you the ability to format your posts there. But anyhow, that is for the purposes of making a small mission. I think that is just kind of acceptable. Over here, making the actual mission create tasks and stuff like that, I found was the hardest portion there. So what I've done here to make the actual missions work is that I have these create task modules and these set task state modules. So what we can do here, just to demonstrate, I'm going to detach all of these here. And this is task 1. That'll come in handy later on. You do have to name the individual tasks with task IDs. That'll come in handy later on when we actually finish off a mission. So just take note of that. I just number them numerically. So how the mission works is that, where the create task system is that you plug down a module. You put down a trigger, so we say we want to make an area clear mission, so we want to say activation would be when op4 is out of this area, so we killed all of the op4 inside this circular zone. We'll actually make this independent. And what I plan on doing is that I just plan on shooting one person for the sake of for the sake of demonstration. So what will happen is that, we've essentially set up the game's logic right here, right? So when this independent the independent people, the NPCs and objects are essentially gotten rid of inside this zone, that'll actually trigger a event. And this event will go to a task state. So this trigger will trigger when this guy is killed, and the trigger will set off the task state, and then the task state will then be linked to us, just like that. And what you want to do is that you want to group the set task state and the create task together using both a cyan line as well as a dark blue line, just like that. So you want to group it, and then you want to link it together just like that. And how these task states and create tasks work is that, first and foremost, create task with a title and a description for the purpose of creating a task, right? And in set task state, it will essentially make it so that depending on the trigger, different things happen. So missions are created, assigned, succeeded, failed, and cancelled. So for example, we can make it so that we use one trigger to create the state when we walk into a house, for example. Then in the event that we walk out of the house, it fails afterwards. And then it succeeds if we kill some guy inside the house, and if we go to the balcony, it cancels it through the use of these trigger zones, linking and synchronization, stuff like that. So pretty much making game logic really there. And how I did that was that I just synchronized various different little task states and all of this stuff to these blue flags, which are triggers. And I also have this one here. I kind of figured that since we had this objective of securing this compound, and there's a 50-50 chance of the recon team actually being present here, I kind of figured it'd make a dull objective for placing it on the map. It's kind of a noticeable thing, and I figured this compound would be one of the first things people go for. I wanted to have a counterattack, so what I've done here is that I've set it up so that there are two triggers here, one to finish off the objective and one to trigger when people walk into it, and this should actually be independent. And what this is that it's just simply a trigger that when it activates will be synchronized to a move order. So what that'll do is that when this thing is triggered, this AI squad will be given the command to move here, and once it moves here, by default it will move to the next point and the next point and the next point. So it essentially removes a little dam in the river, allowing the AI to do its routine from there. The other portion is actually finishing a mission. So what do you do now that you have your mission set up, you have your objectives being accomplished, and what happens when the player reaches the end where they can pretty much say, hey, I'm done, what do I do now? Well, you do want to have the mission to end somehow, and there are two different ways that that are practical, at least to me right now. One of the things that you can do is, again, use the task create system. So then say once you finish all the objectives, you synchronize all of these objectives to one create task or set task state module, which will create a task to say return to base, and then synchronize it so that the waypoint at the base or the trigger at the base uses the end one command. So, and then just essentially make it so that it only activates after all of the objectives are completed. Something like that is one thing. But what I've done for this mission is that I've come up over here and I've just placed a trigger in the middle of nowhere with type end1 as the end result for the task, and I've borrowed some nifty little code from the forums, and you typically for things such as like just search it up in Google, say like paradrop script or how do I add this weapon to this guy, right? And typically you have somebody providing the code for you. It is definitely something useful to learn, but this is what I use to just kind of complete the mission. So trigger activated 1, trigger activated 2, trigger activated 3, and once trigger activated 4 is complete, then the game will essentially end like that. You can copy the script here. I just found it on the Vice Studio forums, so thank you whoever posted that. But yeah, that's pretty much this video.